exciting. Jamie Wall is an ambassador for Sport Ireland's Let's Get Back. It's a project aimed at encouraging members of the public that are anxious or unsure about returning to sport and physical activity, that it is possible to do so in a safe and secure manner. For more information, go to sportireland.ie. Jamie, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Ger. How are you?
As a hurling man, what was your take on the civil war that football is embarking on at the moment? Are you a disinterested observer? What did you make of the whole thing?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm not a hurling man. I'm a GAA man. I played hurling and football for a long time, as you know, and do you know what? It was a weekend where I kind of felt myself looking at sport and kind of almost saying this would be easier if I was disinterested. As you know, I'm also a Man United man, and I was at Old Trafford on Sunday.
Wow.
So that was another moment where I was kind of I actually was pictured on the Sky Sports camera when the 5th goal went in. I could see the spider camera looking at me, and I was just there with my father oh no. And that's basically how I felt on Saturday as well. I kind of felt provincial councils were Mo Salah, and they were just kicking me while I was down waiting for something better to happen. So yeah, in this instance, I've tried to frame Liverpool as the bad guys, but yeah, look, you're watching it and you're kind of thinking, on Saturday before we left, I was chatting to my brother, and he just looked at his phone and he said, Special Congress, and I looked at me, he's just rolled his eyes, and I was like, you're joking. He said, yeah. So no, definitely not a disinterested observer, a very interested observer, a very kind of just weary observer looking at it, you're watching these, it was all I could, but that I didn't, ring you up there last week when Mr. Reynolds from the Leinster Council was on, because I watched that interview and my blood was boiling just as a person on the ground. I just couldn't believe the general kind of patronising attitude that it has been taken towards, younger people within the association and people who want, changes. There's a kind of a we know best attitude.
Well, let's take it away from Michael specifically, because in fairness to him, right, and while I disagree with a lot of what he said, he did give us 40 minutes of his time to explain what his position, and that I would say of a lot of people within the organisation is, which loads of people didn't bother. They didn't come on. We asked them and they wouldn't come on, and we keep asking them, and we'll keep asking them now for the next 6 months. But what could we do as an organisation to make it more representative of people who are players, who are younger, who have a different mindset to a different generation of people who tend to end up in the administrative and power-broking roles?
It's very hard. I mean, because a lot of younger people aren't interested in that administrative side of it, and I suppose, until younger people get involved in that side of it, then we can't, we can't be too critical, we'll say, of the people who are doing those jobs, because, I suppose for me, the GAA need to look at, I was listening to the tail end of Tom there, and Tom made a very good point that, provincial councils are going to come out against proposals that dilute the impact of the provincial councils. But for me, the provincial council's job actually shouldn't be running competitions. I think that'll be a huge start, is that, the primary role of the provincial councils is, the development of the games in the provinces, and the competitions aren't. Whereas I think that's kind of gotten a small bit mixed up in the last number of years, where provincial councils feel like their primary role is to run their competition and everything else is secondary, So that'd be a huge start. I think, there is still, and it's kind of rare to say, there is still a little bit of, it's not as bad as it was, obviously, because there was a day before where that kind of a mandate from the GPA would have actually been a negative thing in terms of getting something through Congress, and it has changed. And I suppose, I'm speaking from a position of being a small bit disheartened by it all, so I'm likely to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But you know what? There was 49.4% of people in that room did think, we have a problem here, and that's a significant number, and I suppose it is creeping towards getting better, but just listening to you comparing it to the divorce referendum, that was before I was born. It just made me laugh, kind of thinking that is the kind of level of kind of inbuilt opposition to change that we have in the GAA. It's a very, very representative organisation of Irish life.
It is, and it's easy to become disheartened. And I was definitely disheartened for most of Saturday, but then chatting it through with various people was actually there is the bones of a movement here that is unstoppable. I think everybody accepts that Gaelic football is broken at the moment. Now, unfortunately, there are too many vested interests, too many factional interests, too many tribal interests, which haven't been addressed. So we probably need to sit with everybody who is selfishly going, well, how does this affect my chances of winning the All-Ireland? And say, well, if you're true to the spirit of the organisation, which is supposed to be spreading Irish culture and the Irish language, then actually that's not the question you're supposed to ask here. It's how do we increase the benefit for the most people the fastest? And that is to give everybody the same number of games.
But yeah, exactly. But even that, Ger, to be honest with you, like, that argument falls down very quickly in my eyes as from a purely competitive sports point of view. Like, look, the obvious example this year, and I've got a foot in the Meath camp, as Tommy Rooney well knows. Like, I was originally from County Meath before I moved down to Cork, so I watched the Meath ladies this year with massive pride, and obviously that story of going down intermediate, winning the intermediate and winning the All-Ireland, and everyone thought like, oh, this is a massive fairy tale. But like, the bottom line is, anyone who's been involved in Club GAA throughout the country over the last 10 years has seen this story 10 times over. Like, you see teams winning a junior and then bang, winning an intermediate and they're up senior and they're competing senior. And like, you see teams winning intermediates and going on and winning a senior at club level all the time. And like, what annoys me the most about the football change debate is it's literally the only level of Gaelic games between ladies football, camogie, hurling, and every club competition up and down the county. It's literally the only one that isn't graded properly. It's literally the only one where we say at the start of the year, in you go, let's see who wins. And only 5 teams can win a championship trophy at the start of every year, max, like as in you have your 4 provinces in your county. And that, for me, is ridiculous. Like, in the GAA, we need to create more opportunities for, not just for games, and absolutely for games, but also for success, for teams to look at their year as a success. And at the end of your inter-county career, to look back and say, I had opportunities for success. Every year I had an opportunity to do something that wasn't just going to be at the end of the year saying, oh, it's just great, we got to a quarter final this year. It's like that's rubbish, and I've heard people make arguments about, they've spoken about Leicester, for example, in the Premier League. But like, a team in Division 4 winning the championship is not like Leicester winning the Premier League. Like, they were in the Premier League. They were in the top 20 of 92 teams to win that Premier League. It's not the same. And I think, we're very good to look across the water for the example that suits our argument, but not actually look at, the overall kind of overarching thing whereby, you've got 92 teams in English league football, we'll say association football, and they are graded, 20, 24, 24, 24, something like that. Like, every competition in the world is tiered and graded, except our great one that is lasting. There was a comment about throwing away 100 years of tradition. It's not throwing it away; it's honouring it. In my eyes, like, you honour tradition by moving forward. Like, all you actually do is demean tradition by keeping things as they are, they were a brilliant idea. Provincial championships themselves, even, like, I would argue, they're a product of an era where Ireland was a lot more inaccessible. You can get to Dublin now from Cork as fast as you probably would have got to Killarney 40 years ago. It's a different world, and we need to move with that side of it. And I suppose that, for me, is the part of it that is most annoying, is because I don't think there's a cognizance of these new realities, and how do we move with them and create better things for everyone. Like you said, taking off those glasses and those kind of what's best for me and my interest glasses, and thinking what's best overall here.
Do you think that's changing somewhat, Jamie? Like, I mean, Tom mentioned the fact that the Sligo chairperson spoke very well at the weekend. Even down in Cork, someone like Kevin O'Donovan, who was on the show and spoke very well in favour of it. That there does, in some places, seem to be a new generation of thinkers within the GAA, and maybe that traditional representation of Irish life is starting to be chiselled out a little bit within the GAA.
And the Longford GAA chairman, like, in my eyes, actually, the Longford GAA chairman on the Examiner a couple of weeks ago, he made the best points of it, because he actually pointed out the flaws with Proposal B in saying, we're not going far enough with this. And, it does, and I do think it is changing. And like you said, you mentioned Kevin, like, Kevin, and in Cork, like they have totally revamped the Cork Championships, where we've got 5 grades at the moment before you even get to junior in the hurling, and it's 12, 12, 12, 12. We played 3 group games with the club. We're into a semi-final. You know, like it's games in a great kind of run of games and at your level. And honestly, like over the last couple of weeks, everyone I meet when we're out training or we're like from different clubs is saying, God, we have a great championship now. Fair play. They did a great job with the championship. And you're kind of saying, yeah, you know, because they took the bull by the horns and they upset a few people, putting them down a grade and up a grade. And, you know, they weren't really bothered by upsetting people. And that's, you know, that kind of level of bravery, as well as, you know, forward thinking and new thinking, is what we need. Like, it was something actually, you know, like I was in favour of Proposal B purely because I thought it's the best of the 3 proposals on the table, being Proposal A, Proposal B, and the status quo. If you ask me, you know, like, are there flaws with Proposal B? I just said there are massive flaws with it. Like I said, I don't think it went nearly far enough. And what I think is kind of ironic is that, in my eyes, the biggest flaws with Proposal B were the ones that were put in there, you know, to try and get this thing going. You know, they were kind of political kind of allowances, we'll say, to get over the first hurdle of bringing change. And, you know, you're kind of wondering, thinking, you know, Jesus, like, should the next proposal just be an absolute root and branch and just see, like, and just put these people under pressure and say, okay, you pointed out flaws like, you know, the 6th team in Division 1 versus this team in Division 4. Well, let's just go full Division 1, Division 2, Division 3. So if that was your issue, and actually make these people who are, you know, just pointing out flaws that are obvious flaws there, actually put them on the spot and say, okay, now we fixed that flaw. Now what's your issue with this? You know, and maybe this being rejected could be a really, really good thing. Like you said, maybe it will just mobilize people. I feel like I'm getting a small bit mobilized myself here.
Good.
Just talking about it. Like, maybe it will mobilize people to say, do you know what? We gave you a chance and we didn't even go far enough there. Now we're really going for this, you know. But look, like I said, hopefully, like, because I'm looking at inter-county players, like, I'm friendly with inter-county players, and I'm of that age. I'm looking at guys involved with, we'll say, take Clare, for example, and you know, I'm not speaking out of turn here because Podge was on with you, and obviously myself and Podge are very close, we're first cousins, and, you know, he really believed in this change, and like, we spoke about this, and I spoke about the flaws to him, and he said, you know, we need to get this going, and we need to start this, and if we start this, it will get better. Look at the hurling, you know, we had the grades first, and then we got to a round robin, and now we've got this championship. And I said, yeah, that's a fair point. And, like, you know, he's looking at it from a point of view of, like, they had an incredible day. I remember years ago, they won a league final in Croke Park against Kildare, and, like, I would say that was one of their best days as Clare footballers. They got up to Croke Park at their level, and they won a competition at their level, and they got up to Division 2. And now their aim every year is, okay, how can we try and, you know, they've established themselves in Division 2, and now it's like, right, how can we eye up Division 1 from this proper base? And, like, that for me is, like, that's exactly how you build something. And, like, you know, they've done that through the National League, and that's why this proposal had so much merit, because it allowed you to improve while experiencing success, you know, and while ultimately you're still eyeing up that ultimate goal of winning Division 1 championships, like, you know, and that's how a lot of teams have gone after it. But what it does is it provides a workable mechanism to do that, because, you know, we've been doing it the other way for a while, and what we've ended up with is essentially, you know, the same team more or less winning Connacht every year, the same 1 or 2 teams winning Ulster every year, the same team bar once every 15 or 20 years winning in Munster, and the same team winning Leinster every year. And, like, we're ending up with a cartel of the strongest being strong and the weakest kind of just being there. I believe the term was cannon fodder that was used a couple of weeks ago. Like, that's what's ending up being the case. And you just wonder, like, can these new voices, you know, get a little bit more support? But I do think so. And like you said, like we said at the start, the GAA is very representative of Irish life. And, you know, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, was just the 80s, 30 years ago now, Ger, sorry. But like, that's divorce referendums weren't going through, and then, you know, in the last decade, like, we've passed far what would have been seen as far more difficult referendums to pass, because more people are mobilizing and getting interested. So maybe this is going to be the spark that lights the touch paper.